Do you know someone who's been diagnosed with prostate cancer and they've been told that let's keep an eye on it, but it's considered active. It's considered active surveillance. Once you enter active surveillance, of course, you're going to have the fear of God placed in you. If you don't do something now, something could happen. But with active surveillance, that means you've had a PSA test, you've had a biopsy, and now you're going to continue doing this process until things get worse or whatever it is that you go through. Just knowing for most people that they think they have cancer in their body, that's enough to cause enough fear, but to have to monitor it and poke and prod and do all that might be beyond what anybody can handle. Now, moving forward with natural, holistic, alternative, integrative, we might say, could there be other options for you? Possibly. Today's teacher in the classroom is Dr. Stephen Petteruti. He is a DO in Rhode Island, but he also does telemedicine. So listen up today because if you know someone that has been told that they have prostate cancer, whether it's what you think is too far along, or maybe they have high PSA levels, this is the class for you because I want you to take lots of notes and get your paper and pencils out because we're going to learn and grow together with Dr. Petteruti.
And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
Hi, my name is Lily McDermott, and I am a certified life coach, a certified holistic cancer coach, and the host of the Lillian McDermott radio show. Classroom. If this is your first time in the classroom, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening and viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. That's what I say every time we come on the classroom. And sometimes when you're listening to me, you go, oh, that topic is okay, or that's not. But how many of us know somebody, or you yourself, have prostate cancer? I've, when I first started learning new truths about cancer and a natural way to heal the body, because nobody is chemotherapy deficient. So when I started learning about this, I got angry. So I'm going to warn you right now, you might get angry about the things you hear today, but I'm here to tell you that if you're curious and not critical, you might discover a new way to deal with and love someone that has prostate cancer. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Stephen Petteruti is here to do just that. Welcome to the classroom. This is your first time in, so I'm just excited that you're here.
Great, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Yes, and I am so grateful that you said yes to this invitation because it had been a while since I'd heard a doctor speak as boldly as you have been. And I know you're classically trained, and as every doctor that comes into the classroom, they've been checked out very well before you walk into the classroom. And I'm curious as to your story. How does a classically trained DO, medical doctor, uh, chooses a path where they're talking about a different perspective when it comes to health?
Right, so that is really the essence of it. People ask me how I got here, and my answer is the patients led me here. I am board certified in family medicine. My father was a primary care doctor. I chose osteopathic primary care because of its focus on the body healing itself. I really believe in that concept. We are a self-healing machine. Somewhere along the way, we became segmented, we became carved up into pieces, cardiac, neurologic, orthopedic, all segregated. It all should come together. So I went in the Army, became board certified in family medicine, and then dutifully practiced conventional medicine. And I realized I wasn't having the effect. It was not the life-changing impact I imagined I could have. Now, one thing, Lillian, that actually emboldened me a little bit was the success that I had treating obesity. And at the time, this was in the 1990s, early 2000s, it was and still is a neglected entity. And I took the time to study it. I took the time to develop protocols that were and are enormously successful. So I thought, hey, there's a way to get to health that's outside of what I learned in residency and medical school. Now let's go on to cancer. I can tell you that those of us in primary care are intimidated by cancer. Historically, when a patient of mine would acquire malignancy, I would back up because I didn't know what to do. That was a realm of oncology, of chemotherapy, that it was beyond my scope of expertise. So I would watch my patients and their health would be wrecked. And I would be thinking, this is awful. Could we do more? Could we be better at this? Gosh, it had to be 12 years ago now. A patient approached us and said, can you help my mother? She's been getting intravenous vitamin C and it's really beneficial. I didn't know a lot about it, but I studied it. I became expert in it. I ended up writing a book, Vitamized Health. And that patient led me into the field of complementary cancer care. So there we are, and we're watching our patients thrive. We like to develop what we call outliers. An outlier, Lillian, is somebody that is thriving, feels healthier, is doing better. And it's not contradictory to conventional oncology. A fool would deny therapeutic value where it exists in a strong measure, but it is also equally deficient to embrace convention because it is convention. So now we get to prostate cancer. And this is a unique entity. Think about it. What are the cancer? What are the disease state? What are the malignancy? Would you biopsy and say to, let's say, a woman with breast cancer, we just found out you have breast cancer. Biopsy showed positive. And we're not going to do anything except for another biopsy in another 3 months. It is defying logic. So this bothers me. My rational being is saying, this doesn't seem right. We're sticking needles into cancer. So I'm bothered, right? And I'm observing. Then a study came out in 2023 that is compelling and really should have forced us to just stop the presses. It was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. It goes by the acronym, the Protect T study. Dr. Hamby was the author of it. And what they did in this study, Lillian, was fascinating. They looked at men with prostate cancer, and they segregated them into 3 cohorts. One group had the gland removed, another group had radiation, a third group did nothing. And they observed them, see what the outcome would be. When you think about it, not think about it, I researched this. So, how did we get where we are? Nobody has ever bothered to research whether or not these life-damaging treatments actually work. Take out a prostate gland, men's never the same. Or radiate them, never the same. But does it work? So back to the Hamby study. They follow men out 10 years. They follow them out 15 years. And they look at the differential. There was none. There was no difference in death in the 3 groups. And this is chilling to me. There was no statistical difference in death from metastatic prostate cancer. Now just let that sink in. You get your gland removed, it should cure you. And this is what the urologists tell many patients. They'll say, we can cure your cancer. Folks, that is a misstatement. It is factually incorrect. Or the radiation, not going to cure anything, right? It is compelling for men. You're told you have prostate cancer. And you got 3 things you can do. We can take out your gland. We can irradiate you, both of which are going to cause harm. The third option is we could do nothing. So rather than call it nothing, that doesn't sound so cool. They call it watchful waiting, or they call it active surveillance. Folks, think about that. Sticking a needle in cancer. Sometimes it's essential, but it risks metastatic spread on a cellular level. Now, I say that with confidence. It is not research validated because you almost can't. But think about this. In my practice, if I'm taking a melanoma, a potentially fatal skin cancer, if I'm removing that from a person's skin and I cut through the middle of it, that's malpractice because I'm disseminating cancer cells. Imagine a surgeon who's doing a lumpectomy for cancer. And rather than carefully excise the tumor, he cuts in the middle of it. That's malpractice. How in the world can we be reassured that sticking a needle into prostate cancer is not going to disseminate those cells? It defies logic. And there are studies that validate this concept of called its needle track metastases. And those studies are out there in breast cancer, they're out there in prostate cancer. Now, to your listeners, my point is not to dissuade you from all forms of needle biopsies. However, you should ask questions. But the focus today being on prostate cancer, I will state this rather succinctly. I do not see a role for biopsying the prostate gland ever. I don't see how it helps discern what to do next. So in the world of prostate cancer, we have a Gleason score. Dr. Gleason in 1980s, 1990s devised a pathological scale based on looking at cells. And if they look funny, they get a different grade. These are atypical cells. Are they cancer? Well, let's define our terms. What is cancer? In my definition of it, it is a progressive disease with an ability to metastasize and to extend. There is another category, and I think the evolution of urology and of prostate cancer is moving in this direction, Lillian. And this is where the watchful waiting comes from, because medical community, even the conventional community, is starting to recognize, hey, we're hurting people. We're scaring the bejesus out of men. They're jumping to get the prostate removed under the belief that they'll be protected from death by cancer, which is a horrible fate most people would rather avoid, obviously. But at the price of impotence, the price of urinary leakage, the price of surgical complications. Horrible what we do to men. We absolutely devastate their masculinity with this kind of somewhat false hope. So we're seeing that this cancer behaves differently. I believe there are two different kinds of cells that are assessed. There is atypical dormant cells. I call them ADCs. Those are cells that are in the gland. They can never hurt anybody if they stay in the gland, right? Keep that capsule intact. The body attempts to wall off cancer. The body is actively fighting it. We were talking a moment ago about the immune system. That is one of the primary defenses against cellular cancer spread. A cellular cancer occurs, the immune system recognizes it as foreign and kills it. If it gets a foothold, if a cell clusters into a tumor, it becomes impervious, resilient to the immune system. And the point that you were making about emotional health and its connection to the immune system is compelling. It's not an accident that we see people 2 years after their spouse dies become diagnosed with cancer. It's not a coincidence that it happens after a major psychological, emotional trauma, right? These gaps in immune health enable these cells to get a foothold. So folks, you take care of your immune system, it's not a sporadic event. It is a daily routine. So, back to prostate cancer. So we've got these problems. How do we deal with men? One of the things that we've developed is called the Petteruti protocol. So I named it that because I deserve blame if it fails. I deserve blame if it works.
And I love your philosophy so far. I don't think it's going to be a failure.
Well, it can't fail because it gives men choices on how to live, choices about how to manage their health. I object to being emotionally coerced into taking a path just because it's the standard of care. The standard of care in prostate cancer treatment has evolved through guesswork. And dare I say it, it is propagated because it has now become a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I,
The
I have to I
prostate,
have to add something there. I
sure,
remember when the housing crisis happened and they bailed out the banks, not the business owners or the homeowners or anything like that. And I
yeah,
remember hearing blatant, the banks were too big to fail. And I heard that and it stayed with me. And
yeah,
with cancer and chemotherapy and radiation, too big to fail.
yeah,
So they're protecting the lie. I really do believe. Now, there's a lot of people that get well with chemotherapy, but I believe as a coach, I could be wrong, perhaps a doctor, you might have a different perspective, that their why was greater than their fear of cancer. They really did everything, their perspective, their mindset, they changed whatever it is that they needed to do. And there's many success stories, but unfortunately, these success stories aren't followed beyond 5 years, and eventually they get cancer again.
yeah. You're right. You're right. The 5 year ring the bell moment is a false goal. I mean, it's important. It's great when people
Yeah.
achieve it, but the idea that you're cancer free, no. Cancer is a lifelong cellular event. You know, there was a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine a few years ago about delayed relapse of breast cancer. After 5 years, you go to 10, you go to 15. If you have a stage one breast cancer, your 10-year rate of relapse was between 10 and 15%. That's compelling.
Mhm.
What do we do about that? I mean, it's parallel to the conversation we're having about prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And we could talk about the milieu, about the environment, internal and external. But before we even get to that piece of it, we have to deal with this phenomenon, right, that we just alluded to.
Mhm.
The prostate biopsy industry is huge. And folks, it's not an evil cabal. These are not dastardly people behind the curtain figuring out how they're going to kill you for money.
They were doing what they were trained to do.
It's well, it's doing what they're trained to do, and it's the financial incentive dynamic.
Mhm.
Everybody has a financial incentive. Most people do, right? Um, I get paid for what I do. The urologists get paid for what they do. What they do is biopsy prostates. Now, think about this too. You know, the poor urologist. You got a person with an elevated PSA. What does that mean? By the way, folks, the PSA is an arbitrary line in the sand. It's a
Yes.
made-up number.
Yes.
Nobody really knows where that cutoff should be. So please, if your PSA is, and I'm using air quotes, elevated, take a deep breath. It does not correlate with cancer.
There,
The
the doctor or the doctor that created that wrote a book called The Great Prostate Hoax. I don't know if you've ever read that book,
I
but
did.
he basically said that he was basically,
Yeah,
did a study and they turned it into this end all be all catch all of prostate
right.
cancer that had nothing to do with what the originating thought of PSA was.
Let me, if I may, do a quick historical overview.
Would love that.
How did we get here? Right. So we know prostate cancer is prehistoric. There are archaeological digs where they found evidence of it in the bones of these ancients, right? Cancer was found in maybe 1 to 2% of the pathological specimens, and they've done hundreds, if not thousands. Does it mean cancer was rare at that time? Perhaps, but we can't tell because we don't have tissue. However, it's plausible it was much less prevalent. Now let's go to the England in the late 1800s, one of the first prostatectomies ever done. And the surgeon said at the time, this prostate cancer is a rare disease you will hardly ever see, right? Genetically, we haven't changed. And now you'll read it's 1 out of 8 men. So what happened? Follow the breadcrumbs. Now we're into the 1950s. And prostatectomy, the removal of the gland, becomes the standard of care. How do we get there without a PSA, without any blood testing, a digital rectal exam? Prostate feels kind of lumpy. We do a biopsy. We find cancer cells, we take the gland out. A presumption of benefit without any research evidence of proof of changing outcomes from 1950. So, what do the statistics tell us or the demographics? The rate of death from prostate cancer continued to increase decade over decade from 1950 until approximately 2000, maybe a little 1990. Now, if taking out prostate glands cured cancer, shouldn't those rates have gone down? They did not. So we have this evidence of potential lack of benefit. Now comes the PSA. And as Dr. Alban said in his book, he was afraid that it would be misused. He was afraid it would be used to scare men into expensive procedures that would feed the machine. And by golly, that is exactly what has occurred. And because of the somewhat monopolistic control that oncology and urology has over the care of prostate cancer, it's difficult to enter into another realm of treatment. So we have the PSA test and now the biopsies. And from a urologist perspective, a PSA is, quote, elevated. Standard of care, if I don't do standard of care, even if it's unproven, it is the prevailing standard in the community. I am liable medical legally. So I have to tell my patient, get a biopsy. And upon getting the biopsy, if there are cancer cells, I'm going to advocate for surgical removal or radiation. This does a few things. So here's the incentive. The doctor's protected from malpractice. The doctor takes comfort by virtue of following the standard of care. The doctor gets paid. You get paid a lot more to do a biopsy than you do to sit there and chat for 30 minutes about the risk benefit, pros and cons. Look, in a perfect world, that's what we like to believe happens. But you know what has happened in medicine, how it's degraded? When you go see your doctor, they're more interested in looking at their computer than you. You've got about 3 minutes to make your case. This is a horrible space to be in for something as sensitive and something as life-changing as dealing with prostate cancer or cancer in general. So we've got this machinery and it's churning, but pause the momentum. Look at that study from 2023, and there are others that support the concept that we may be, in fact, I think we have, gone off the rails. The entire focus of prostate cancer diagnosis and treatment has lost its focus on actually maintaining health and quality of life. The average man diagnosed with prostate cancer felt great. Went to see the doctor. I feel fine. PSA was 6. Makes the doctor nervous. It went from 6, it went up to 7 the next year. Let's start the machine churning. So these men are told, yeah, you might have cancer. Psychologically, imagine living with the sword of Damocles. So the biopsies are done. They're told they have prostate cancer and that they can do nothing. See, I feel that we need to continue the research. We need to be open-minded. We need to loosen up the concept of standard of care. We will never have a controlled study to prove or disprove the benefit of treatments regarding prostate cancer because it takes 10 to 20 years. The mortality rate from prostate cancer, almost regardless of its stage at diagnosis, the 5-year mortality rate is almost 0. Because it is so uncommon for men to die from prostate cancer, there's a mutual bias that happens. Man goes to see the doctor, PSA is elevated. They take out the gland. He's leaking urine. He can't get an erection. He feels like crap. However, he's not dead. So both the patient and the doctor must believe that this harm that was imposed had value. So there's this emotional dynamic, and you see it all the time in the news media. Thank God they caught my prostate cancer early because they took out my gland and they cured me. Well, you were never going to die from it in the first place. Another study that helps illuminate the topic, they looked at men with prostate cancer. Roughly 250 of them were followed unto their death. And the question was, well, what are these men with known cancer going to die from? Only approximately 35 of them died from prostate cancer. The rest, they died from heart disease and other causes. Now, the message to take out of that is not that we can be cavalier, but it is this. We have to weigh the benefit of a treatment against its harm. For a treatment that is as devastating as taking out a prostate gland, as horrible as irradiating it, and don't tell me about targeted radiation. How stupid is that, right? as if, because they have this advance as it's perceived in radiation therapy, where they can target with an MRI where the nodules are, right? That is silly, Lillian. Prostate cancer does not organize itself into neat little packages so that it can be targeted. It
You
is
know,
disseminated,
it's like we all believe that Santa Claus is real. And everybody is saying,
right?
yep, Santa Claus is real. And by the way, if you're watching this and you are below the age of 10, Santa Claus is real. However, if for all of the rest of you that are out there, we wouldn't just say Santa Claus is real, let's investigate it. And
Yeah,
this is what's happened is like we're all believing what we've been taught without any discernment. And
yeah,
you're right. And I've seen a change, Dr. Petteruti, about biopsy. There are some people that say that don't do a biopsy. When I coach somebody, I can't tell them what to do. I just work with them and tell them what their options are without any profit whatsoever, because whether they have a biopsy or not, I'm their coach. That's what I'm doing. But just recently, I have someone that I'm coaching has lung cancer, and they wanted to do a biopsy, and I prepared them the day before, and I said, if they're going to do a biopsy on your lung, just tell them that you'd rather have the nodule, whatever, removed. And I don't know if
right.
that was good advice, but it just made sense to me that just remove it. Just have them remove it very carefully
Mhm.
instead of cutting it, puncturing it, and now the genie is released. What happens? They go to the doctor, they're empowered, they're ready to go. The doctor says, well, you would have to go to a surgeon for that. In other words, the flow has got to stop. And then you feel like, oh, well, I've had an appointment. I already said I was going to do it. It's almost like a contract that I strike, and I call it the white coat trance. I hear and obey with this
Right.
white coat trance. It's like, okay, all of a sudden, all the empowerment goes out the window because you're in a contract with this person that you trust 100%. And I always encourage people to keep their power, to keep their power, ask the questions. And I love what you're doing because you're saying things, and I'm sure that you have a lot of naysayers saying, "Oh, what do you know? You're not an oncologist." Well, even the oncologists don't know.
Right.
They don't know what you know.
Well, the perspective that I bring is the outsider view looking in. I like to believe that what I do well is ask good questions and then seek answers. So that's what I've done with regard to prostate cancer. What can we do? This is not for everybody. And men, if you're as you're listening to this, it's not wrong to choose to get a biopsy, and it's
No.
not wrong to choose to get a prostatectomy. My message is simply one of, as you've said it, empowerment, giving you options, deciding how you want to live. The things that have also motivated me, Lillian, is my patients observing their arc of history.
Mhm.
And there's a gentleman I have in my practice was diagnosed with prostate cancer in his 50s. And the surgeon said, well, I'll set you up for a removal. We'll take your gland out. And he said, oh, not so fast. I don't want it removed. And the surgeon said, that's suicidal. You're going to die of prostate cancer. At the time, he's in his 50s. He had a young girlfriend. He had no interest in sacrificing his manhood. And he said, I might die, but I'm going to live first. So he's in his 50s. Now, by the time I met him many years later, he had pioneered his own pathway. He had done his own homework. And this is before the date of the internet and the ability for research to happen easily. And he fell into my care, and we continued that path for him. He's now in his 80s. He's still alive. He still has prostate cancer. I look at cases like that, Lillian, and I start to think, wow, what are we doing? Now, here's another detail for you
Mhm.
men reflecting on this. It is likely that prostate cancer cells are normal, inevitable, and ought not to be feared. In fact, I'll tell my patients, I want you to die at a ripe old age with prostate cancer cells in your gland. Now, why would I say that? Because cadaveric studies have shown us that men over the age of 90, the majority of them have prostate cancer cells in the gland. Now, If the majority of a population has a trait, we can define that as normal. And those cells in the gland had no bearing on their health throughout their life. Now, here's another analogy I think that'll help us reflect on this.
Mhm.
When I was young in my profession, women would get a pap smear when they become sexually active. We would typically do them to teenagers, 18, 19 years old. And if they had abnormal cells, these were called atypical cells of uncertain significance on the pap smear. We interpreted that as precancerous. And we would freeze the cervix, we would cone biopsy it. And I was doing this in my residency, and we thought, that's just good. We're helping people, we're preventing cancer. We found out decades later that it had no bearing, that the majority of these atypical cells converted to normal on their own and did not correlate with cancer risk. So the recommendations have now changed. We no longer do pap smears at the onset of sexual activity. They've been delayed. There's an analogy with prostate as well. Atypical dormant cells. You let them sleep. So that begs the question, and listeners, I'm sure, asking in their mind, well, what am I going to do? I have an elevated PSA. How do I know if it's cancer or not? Well, you can do non-tissue-based diagnostic assessment.
Mhm.
Biomarkers can be followed. Another question comes up. How do I know if this is aggressive cancer or not? Aggression implies movement and change. It is not a Gleason score, which is a snapshot of one point in time. So you'll look at the sequential change. What's happening with the biomarkers? Anatomically, what does a prostate gland look like? We could do an MRI now, and we could look at the gland. We could see the nodules. We could see how big it is. We could tell what the lymph glands look like. All this information can be acquired without sticking a needle in it. So you can track it sequentially. And the treatments that are rendered, whether they are, my protocol or whether they are a conventional treatment protocol, it's possible to do this without sticking needles in the gland at all. You can make a stronger argument for just taking the gland out without a biopsy, even though I would never advocate that. But it's interesting, isn't it? How do we know that we're not causing metastatic consequence by sticking needles in it? We don't. And you cannot reassure people. This is one thing that bothers me too. When the doctor says to a patient, oh, that does not increase metastatic risk, that's not an honest statement. They should simply say, we don't know. We feel that the risk benefit favors a biopsy. That's fair to say, but we don't know if it disseminates cells or not. There are a couple of studies out of the breast cancer literature that help illuminate this. One of them, they looked at women with highly suspicious lesions. One group had a biopsy before the lumpectomy. The other group just did the lumpectomy. The people who had the biopsy had a much higher rate of metastatic disease later on. They did another study where they looked at needle tracking. So women that had a biopsy and subsequently got a mastectomy, they analyzed the tissue and they found cancer cells along the needle track. So the evidence that this can happen exists. The caution about doing biopsies should be honored. And the consideration of sequential non-biopsy monitoring is reasonable to consider. And how do we know if something is aggressive? Points of change can occur. Our goal, the goal of my protocol, is to maintain your vitality. And this becomes the inevitable. Lillian, we're all going to die, right? I don't care if you have prostate cancer or not, the end comes. So I'm not accelerating it and I'm not rooting for it. But what's important to me, to the patients that choose the pathway I recommend, quality of life. I want to die with my facilities intact. I want to die with my manhood intact. I want to die with my strength. I want to die with my energy. Do not make me wither. Good Lord, what they do to men. Never mind the prostatectomy. Never mind the radiation. You know what they do to men?
Take away their
After
testosterone. Take away their
they,
testosterone.
they castrate them.
Mhm.
You know what castration? That's considered cruel and unusual punishment. You can't do that to a prisoner. But men do it, they volunteer. Yeah, castrate me, because they have a euphemism for it, Lillian. They call it androgen deprivation therapy.
Yeah.
Sounds much more genteel.
Yes.
The consequences are equally devastating. And I've had This is something you people need to know about this. If you've had prostate cancer, if it's already been removed, radiation, wherever you are in that arc, if you have what's called a biochemical recurrence, in my view, that's an entirely artificial term. The notion that your PSA is going up and that justifies castration, man, that's a big leap of faith. You're guaranteed harm with no absolute proof that you're going to affect the outcome. So a man feels great. His PSA after the prostatectomy, let's say it's zero point 0, and it goes up to 0.5. And he says to his doctor, I feel great. And the doctor says, yeah, but you've got a biochemical recurrence. We now have to put you on androgen deprivation therapy. Now we're back to the financial reinforcement. It has become so petrified as a standard of care. And there's so much money to be made, billions of dollars with these drugs. And then men take comfort. Hey, this is great. I went on my drug and my PSA went from 0.5 to 0.1. Yahoo. Like, does it really matter?
It's not even correlated with it. I mean, it's a story that we bought into
Yep.
and we're playing along with the role. It's like
Yep.
being in the Truman Show and everything is organized and you do the same thing over and over and over again. It is when I first started dipping my toe in the cancer world, it was divine. It was divine intervention. I truly believe that. And
Yep.
as a result of the lessons that I learned, I started a foundation called the McDermott Holistic Healing Foundation. The goal is to help pay for these treatments that are natural and that, like instead of treating the tumor, treating the body, figuring
Right.
out what are you deficient with. Well,
Right.
as excited as I am, I'm thinking everybody's going to want to do this. They'd rather donate to the pink tutus and eat their chocolate and do the things that I mean, the billions and trillions of dollars and still no, no cure. And that's why I get so frustrated and I'm so passionate about doing what we do here at whenyouneedafriend.com in the classroom. So I want to encourage you to go to the classroom at whenyouneedafriend.com. While you're there, please subscribe, like and follow me on all social media. Start doing your dip in the toe, your journey, so that the stuff that you're hearing isn't Dr. Petteruti's uh, truth or my truth. It's actually research that you've done as well. And that way you're not just repeating what you hear, which is what we've been doing all along. So what I suggest is that not only do you follow and like me and subscribe, but that you share this video with everybody that you know, because this is something that's got to stop. It's just got to stop. That people, once they are informed of their choices, if they want to choose whatever they want to choose, they're free to choose. It's called informed choice. But if they don't have the right information, how are they going to choose? So, like I said, go to whenyouneedafriend.com and go and play around, check out all the classes that we've done. While you're there, also check out my subscribers, support them. So, I'm not my subscriber, my sponsors. Support them the way that they are supporting the classroom. I want to encourage you to go to my Shop Now bag, check out all the different Lilly approved products, and try them out. See if this is something that resonates with you. If you having from beauty products all the way to pain management, you will find something there for you. And especially, hydrogen therapy, molecular hydrogen therapy, that's a great way to start reversing mitochondrial damage and start giving your body what it needs. It's a great place to start. And so, with that in mind, I want to encourage you to also look at November 1st, 2025. We're going to do the I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit. And that is a whole day of learning new truths about how the body can just return to its natural state by doing things that are less invasive, more loving to the body. So we're going to have a full day of learning from wonderful teachers. And it's really a phenomenal day of hope, of of aha moments, like I knew this could be true, but someone took my hope away, that type of thing. So please mark your calendars. Come to Florida. If you are living in Florida, it's even easier. Get a group of people, create a field trip. The tickets will go on sale pretty soon. But for now, just know, mark your calendar, save the date. That's our Liberation Day, where we tell our body, just tell me what you need and I'll give it to you. And the body will love us back. And last, you could become an enrolled student in the classroom, whether it's $1, $1,000 a month, a recurring donation, whatever it is that you can give, whether it's your time, your talent, your treasure, everything that you can give, whatever you can donate is so appreciated because you get to watch this for free, but it costs us a lot. So please give generously, and help us continue growing the show by you sharing this video with someone you love. You are helping grow the classroom. That way, the algorithms can't affect us either, because the more you share, the more you comment, the more reactions that we have, the less the algorithms can manipulate and control us. So please remember that you're in choice, you're in control, and I am so grateful that Dr. Stephen Petteruti is here, and we're going to learn more about how you can learn more about him. Because of technology, we lost the internet, we lost our connection with Dr. Petteruti, and he had a lot of patients that he's got a thriving practice in Rhode Island. He also does telemedicine. And unfortunately, we weren't able to finish today's class. However, I know we're going to get him back soon. This is very powerful information. I haven't heard a doctor since before the pandemic speak as boldly as he has about cancer and biopsies. Many of them are like, well, the benefits outweigh the risk. Well, when you look at the risks and what the risk could be, um, versus how your life will be after radiation or chemotherapy or anything to that effect, then one could make an informed choice, a decision of what they would like to do. And so today's class was strictly about empowerment, empowering someone to know that if you are diagnosed with cancer, a biopsy may not be the end all be all to get you through, whether it's breast cancer or lung cancer or prostate cancer. Specifically, what we were discussing today is prostate cancer and how it doesn't make sense to do a biopsy when there are other ways that are non-invasive to test to see if you have cancer. I have to share a story since I have the extra time, and we're going to be getting Dr. Petteruti back. I want to share a story of a person that I was coaching a long time ago. And basically, they were told by their doctor that their PSA was too high and they needed to go do a biopsy. Well, this person had already done 2 biopsies prior, but because now the person had already known the harm and the risks of a biopsy, he chose not to do the biopsy, the 3rd biopsy. And they've been monitoring what they were calling suspicious lesions in the prostate for quite some time. Well, that person decided to change their lifestyle. They decided to do emotional trauma work. And this is one of the things that Dr. Petteruti and I were discussing before we started recording, which is that when you have prostate cancer, or if you have that there's an emotional connection. It could be familiar, like a child, or a disagreement with someone that is family, a father, a son, a brother, some male figure or maybe molestation, or maybe there could be a connection. So we were talking about this prior to, and he said, we should talk about this. So since he's not able to do so, I guess I'll just bring it up right now, and then we'll have a part two to this class. And I just loved this conversation. So I'm very sorry that we lost him because of the internet. Both our internets dropped. It wasn't just ours, it was theirs as well. And then he had to go see patients, his time allotted. And how wonderful that he, puts his patients first and say, instead of saying, yeah, they can wait for me. So the emotional connection as a certified holistic cancer coach, that's the first thing I do with the cancer clients that I have that I'm coaching, is to try to get them to see the connection between that cancer or that dis-ease with anger, or the loss of a child, the loss of a fatherhood, the loss of a relationship. There's cheating, there's abortions, there's so many different reasons why that trauma, if not resolved, can be stored in that area. And if not dealt with, it becomes a tumor. It's like a little ball. But let's say there's cancer, like Dr. Petteruti was saying, that if you cut into the middle of a tumor, that would be considered malpractice. Well, the prostate is very small. Most say the size of a walnut, if I understand. And if you cut into it and you take a portion of it, there's going to be cancer cells on the needle. There's going to be bleeding, which is that could release the cancer cells. So he shared many reasons why an MRI, a blood test, observing without the invasive procedure might be better for everybody. Again, urine choice, that is not advice, or he is not your doctor. You need to do your own research so that you feel empowered to make the decision, because this is what's going to happen. If you decide that you do not want to do a biopsy, or if you don't want to go to an oncologist, people are going to say to you, oh, you're being irresponsible. It happened to me when I chose not to remove my gallbladder and decided to do a cleanse and fast instead. I was called irresponsible. I was told that my gallbladder would rupture. And these are people, well-meaning people, but they don't know what I know. And so now you know a little bit more about this holistic approach to cancer, a little bit more, at least more than you did before you started the classroom today. So this person decided that they weren't going to do the biopsy, but they did not change their lifestyle. They didn't change anything about themselves. They were just eating as much sugar, stressing about things that perhaps maybe needed to be dealt with. And I remember discussing this with the individual, and I asked when they were going to start changing their lifestyle. And they said, when I get the diagnosis. Well, act as if you have it. Why wait for a diagnosis that's going to get marked in your file, and then if you try to ever get anything like a insurance or medical, you have a pre-occurred, you just don't know what you don't know. So act as if you have it, do the lifestyle changes, do everything you possibly can to give your body what it needs. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about with Dr. Petteruti is that he has, I believe he's part of the Drip Bar, which I have a friend that is also a franchise owner. And I hope I'm not incorrect here. And if I am, I will follow up and say I am. But what I wanted to say is that there's other things. Are you deficient in magnesium? Or do you have do you need vitamin C in the body? Do you have enough vitamin C? Because the body doesn't make it. And that right there is an incredible anti-cancer fighter. And it's an antihistamine, and it's a anti-inflammatory. And there's so many benefits to high dose vitamin C. There's chelation. Do you have any chemicals, whether it's cadmium or lead or, other things as well? What is it? So what is it that we need to take out? What is it that we need to put in? And that's when the body starts going, oh, I can start releasing, I can start doing whatever it is that we need to do. And that's when all of a sudden, as he was saying, within 5 years, nobody dies of prostate cancer. It usually takes 10 to 20 years. And so, whatever you've done before that, you won't know if it helped or not because you didn't allow your body to heal naturally. So, there's a lot of, of, of truth to what he said. But if you talk to an oncologist that's allopathically trained, they might say that's irresponsible. So you've got to make that decision. As a holistic cancer coach, I cannot make somebody do what they don't want to do. I can give them options, just like we're giving you options today, but ultimately you get to decide. So this individual has now been, I don't know, they did everything they needed to do. Once I said, act as if you have it. Why get the diagnosis? Because if they say that all men are going to get prostate cancer because it's natural to be there, then why not act as if it, especially if you're younger in age, could it be mold? Could it be, so much inflammation in the prostate that the sugar that you're eating, the diet that you're having, the body can't process? So there's so many different ways that so we had another interruption. So uh, so if it's a little choppy, just know there was a little bit of an interruption, and but we're almost to the end of the class. Just know that the call that I just got that it caused the interruption, it was the Dr. Petteruti. And so there was a little bit of a disruption again. So if it's a little choppy, just know that we are working really hard to make sure that you have this class today. But good news is, I did get a call letting me know that Dr. Petteruti will be joining us again. So stay tuned. This is very important that we start to learn and grow and dip the toe, be curious, not critical, about how the body can heal naturally. How does the body heal naturally? By giving it what it needs. The body is so forgiving. It is amazing all the things that have to happen just for you to take your next breath, and you don't even know you're doing it. There's a lot of things that need to happen for us to stay healthy, but um, we can influence that what we eat, how we sleep, how we stress. Remember Dr. Lorraine Day and how she used to say all of those things? There's the emotional and then there's the physical body. And so I want to encourage all of you to dig deeper and be curious and share this video with everybody that you know. Please understand that you are you're co-creator. You're a co-creator. And so I look forward to my next conversation with Dr. Stephen Petteruti, and I will have all the information in the blog on how to get a hold of him. And I look forward to having him more in the classroom because this is information that, as I mentioned before, that before COVID, before the pandemic, there was a lot of people saying this. But then all of a sudden, we started getting censored. Doctors started losing their license. They were getting arrested for saying these new truths, truths that have been around for a long time. So I want to encourage you to do whatever you can to be what you want to be without the influence of everybody around you, because that's what will happen the moment you choose. And since there's a little choppy, I may be repeating myself, but you will get people telling you, well-meaning people, what to do. But that doesn't mean they're right. Do your research, pray, and discern what's best for you, and be bold. Be bold, because there's a lot of men out there that are being emasculated with just a woke mentality. We don't need to add emasculation or having your parts removed because of fear. Let your curiosity be greater than your fear. And I pray that you will do what's best for you. Do your research, not just because I said it that you should do this, but do your research because you want to do this, so that when you know better, you do better. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott, and unfortunately, Dr. Petteruti is not here. Dr. Stephen Petteruti, wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.